Renee Johnson sighed as she parked her 28 Honda Civic a few meters from the main gate of Fort Benson Military Base. It was almost 6 o'clock on a hot Friday afternoon in August, and she just wanted to get home, take a refreshing shower, and relax after a long day at the administrative department of the local hospital. The military base was on the way between her work and her apartment, and she usually didn't pay much attention to the military complex as she passed by it every day. But today was different. Her younger brother, Marcus, was serving in the Army and had been transferred to Fort Benson just 2 weeks ago. He had called earlier that day, asking her to stop by the base to deliver some important documents he had forgotten in their shared apartment. Marcus was on duty and couldn't leave the base, and the paperwork was urgent, something related to military health insurance that needed to be sorted out by Monday. Renee adjusted the rearview mirror and checked her appearance. Her curly hair was tied back in a casual bun, and despite the heat, her light makeup was still intact. She wore a simple set of dress pants and a button-down shirt, the unofficial uniform of the administrative department where she worked. She grabbed her brother's briefcase from the passenger seat and got out of the car. The late afternoon sun was still strong enough to make her squint as she walked toward the base checkpoint. 2 military policemen, a young-looking white man and a middle-aged Latino, stood near the main gate, conversing amongst themselves. When they noticed Renee approaching, they interrupted their conversation and observed her with expressions she couldn't quite decipher. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Renee said politely when she was close enough. "I need to deliver these documents to Specialist Marcus Johnson. He's on duty today and asked me to bring these papers." The younger officer, whose badge identified him as Officer P, looked at her with a distrustful expression that immediately made Renee feel a knot in her stomach, that familiar feeling she'd known since adolescence, the feeling that her mere presence was seen as a threat or a problem to be solved. "Do you have any identification?" asked Officer Peters, his tone more brusque than necessary. "Of course," Renee replied, remaining calm as she opened her purse to get her wallet. She had learned early on, from her parents' insistent lesson, how to behave in these situations. Slow movements, hands always visible, a calm and polite voice, no sudden movements. While searching for his identity, the second officer, Officer Rodriguez, stepped forward. "What is the full name and unit of the soldier you are looking for?" he asked, in a slightly more professional tone. "Specialist Marcus Johnson, Company B, 27th Engineer Battalion," Renee replied promptly. She had memorized this information when her brother was transferred. Finally, she found her driver's license and handed it to Officer Peters. The young police officer took the document and examined it carefully, repeatedly glancing between the photo on the ID and Renee's face, as if searching for some inconsistency. She maintained a neutral expression, although inside she was beginning to feel that familiar combination of irritation and anxiety. "What exactly is your purpose at the base today?" Peters asked, ignoring the explanation she had already given. "As I said, I'm here to deliver these documents to my brother, Renee," repeated patiently, indicating the folder in her hands. "Their health insurance forms that he needs to fill out and submit by Monday. And why can't he come and pick up those documents in person?" Peters insisted. Renee took a deep breath before answering. "He's on duty and can't leave the base. That's why he asked me to bring them." Officer Rodriguez stepped forward again. "We'll need to verify this. Can you wait here while we confirm the information?" "Sure, no problem," Renee replied, though she was beginning to grow impatient. It was a simple document delivery, something that should only take a few minutes. Peters returned his ID, but not before asking another question. "Is this car parked over there yours?" He pointed to the blue Honda Civic. "Yes, it's mine," Renee confirmed. "Are you aware that you are parked in a restricted area?" he asked, his tone now clearly accusatory. Renee looked at the spot where she had parked. There were no signs indicating any restrictions, and other civilian cars were parked nearby. "I didn't see any signs indicating that the area is restricted," she replied calmly, though her heart had raced slightly. "There are other civilian cars parked in the same spot. That area is reserved for authorized visitors," Peters insisted, ignoring his comment about the other vehicles. "I can move the car if necessary," Renee offered, trying to avoid unnecessary conflict. "I just need to deliver these documents to my brother, and then I'll be right there." Officer Rodriguez seemed somewhat uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was. He exchanged a glance with Peters before saying, "I'll verify the information about Specialist Johnson. Please wait here." Rodriguez walked away toward the guardhouse, presumably to make a call. Meanwhile, Peters continued watching Renee with a distrustful expression she knew all too well. "Have you been to this base before?" he asked. "No," Renee replied. "My brother was transferred here recently, and are you sure he's in the unit you mentioned?" Renee felt her patience wearing thin, but she maintained her composure. "Yes, I'm sure." Peters crossed his arms. "You know, we have strict security protocols. We can't just let anyone into the base." The use of the word anyone did not go unnoticed by Renee. She looked around and noticed that other people, all white, were entering and leaving the base without being stopped for extensive questioning. "I understand the importance of security," she replied, keeping her voice firm. "But I'm just trying to deliver documents to my brother, who is a soldier serving at this base. I have valid identification and can prove my kinship if necessary." Peters seemed about to reply when Rodriguez returned, accompanied by a senior officer with an upright posture and serious expression. The insignia on his uniform indicated that he was a captain. "What's going on here?" the captain asked, glancing between his subordinates and Renee. "Sir, this civilian is trying to enter the base to deliver some documents," Peters explained quickly. "We are following the verification protocol." The captain, whose name tag identified him as Captain Miller, looked at Renee and then at the briefcase in her hand. "What is the name of the military officer you are looking for, ma'am?" he asked, his tone noticeably more respectful than Peters'. "Specialist Marcus Johnson, Company B, 27th Engineer Battalion," Renee repeated. "He's my brother, Captain." Miller nodded. "I know Specialist Johnson. He mentioned that his sister would be bringing some documents." Peters' face showed a brief expression of surprise, quickly masked by forced professionalism. "Madam," the captain continued, addressing Renee normally, "to enter the base, we would need to issue a temporary pass. But since you're only handing over the document, I can ask someone to take them to your brother, if you prefer not to go through the bureaucratic process." The sudden change in treatment was almost comical, were it not for the tension of the previous minute. Renee realized that the captain was trying to remedy the situation, offering a practical solution. "Thank you for the offer, sir," she replied. "If you can guarantee that the documents will reach my brother today, I would be satisfied with that alternative." "Certainly," the captain assured him. He turned to Officer Rodriguez. "Officer, please take charge of delivering this folder to Specialist Johnson." Immediately, Rodriguez nodded. "Yes, sir." Renee handed the folder to Rodriguez, feeling immediate relief at having completed her mission without further complication. She was about to say goodbye and return to her car when Captain Miller spoke again. "Madam, I would like to apologize if there was any misunderstanding or inappropriate treatment," he said, casting a meaningful glance at Officer Peters, who now seemed to be studying the ground with great interest. "Safety is our priority, but we also value respect in dealing with all visitors." The statement was clearly a veiled reprimand for Peters' behavior, and also an attempt at reparation. Renee appreciated the gesture, although she knew that such situations were more common than any officer would like to admit. "Thank you for your understanding, Captain," she replied with a slight smile. "I understand the importance of security. I just want to make sure my brother receives the documents." "Rest assured," the captain reassured her. "And next time you need to visit the base, I suggest you contact the visitor's office in advance. They can facilitate your entry." "I'll do that. Thank you," said Renee, as she turned to. Renee heard the captain addressing the two officers in a low but firm tone. She couldn't make out the exact words, but his body language made it clear that a reprimand was being given. The walk back to her car seemed longer than it actually was. Renee felt her shoulders tense and a familiar lump in her throat. Physical reactions her body had learned to develop in these situations, even when her mind remained calm and composed. As she got into the car, she allowed herself a few moments to take a deep breath and compose herself. The air conditioning blew on her face, offering momentary relief from the heat and tension. She picked up her cell phone and texted Marcus, "Documents delivered. Officer Rodriguez will bring them to you." While waiting for her brother's response, Renee glanced at the checkpoint in her rearview mirror. Captain Miller was still talking to the two officers, his posture clearly indicating that the conversation was serious. Peters kept his head down, occasionally nodding. Her phone vibrated with Marcus's reply. "Thanks, sis. I owe you one. Did everything go well?" Renee hesitated before answering. Should she tell her brother about the treatment she had received? Marcus was protective by nature, and she knew he would be furious. Besides, he would have to continue working with those same officers. It wasn't worth creating an uncomfortable environment for him. "Everything's fine." The captain was very polite, she replied, opting for the simplified version. "See you on Sunday?" "Sure. I'll be off all day. We can have lunch at that restaurant you like." Renee smiled as she read the message. Her brother always knew how to cheer her up, even without knowing that she needed that cheering up at that moment. Before starting the car, she glanced one last time at the checkpoint. Captain Miller was now alone, watching her. When their eyes met, he gave a brief nod, a simple gesture that communicated something between an apology and an acknowledgement. Renee returned the gesture before starting the engine and continuing on her way. On her way home, Renee tried not to think too much about the incident. It wasn't the first time she'd faced this kind of situation, and unfortunately, it probably wouldn't be the last. As a 28-year-old Black woman, born and raised in the southern United States, she had learned early on to navigate these moments with a mixture of dignity and pragmatism. Her father, an Air Force veteran who had served for 20 years, had taught her and Marcus how to behave in the presence of authority figures. Keep calm, speak clearly, be respectful, but never let them take away your dignity, he used to say. You may not change the system in a day, but you can ensure you get home safely. Her mother, a history teacher at a public school, supplemented these lessons with historical and political context. Knowing your history is part of your strength, she always said. When you understand where you come from, it becomes easier to know where you're going. Renee thought about her parents as she drove through the familiar streets of her city. They had moved to Florida 3 years earlier after her father's retirement, but their impact on her and her brother's lives was permanent and profound. Upon arriving at her apartment, Renee was greeted by the insistent meowing of Nala, her 3-year-old Siamese cat. "I missed you too, little," she murmured, bending down to pet the feline who was rubbing against her leg. The apartment wasn't large, but it was comfortable and well decorated. Combination of Renee's refined taste for minimalist design pieces and some family heirlooms, such as the old wall clock that had belonged to her maternal grandmother and the collection of rare books that her father had begun to gather during his travels around the world as a soldier. While preparing a simple meatless salad with grilled chicken and a glass of red wine, Renee finally allowed herself to fully process what had happened at the base. The initial tension, the unnecessary questioning, Officer Peters' distrustful look, and then the arrival of the captain, respectfully addressing her as ma'am and completely changing the dynamic of the situation. It was this contrast that always disturbed her the most. The fact that the mere presence of someone with more authority, someone who chose to see her humanity, was enough to drastically change her treatment, as if respect were something that needed to be ordered and not a basic attitude that should be extended to everyone. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was her best friend, Tasha. "Hey girl, are we still going out tonight? People are already RSVPing at the bar." Tasha's excited voice rang out through the loudspeaker. Renee hesitated. She had arranged to meet friends to celebrate the birthday of Jordan, a co-worker, but after the incident at the base, she wasn't in the mood to socialize. "I don't know, Tash. I had a rough day," she replied honestly. "Complicated like?" Renee sighed. "The usual. I went to deliver some documents to Marcus at the military base and ... double quotes. Oh no," interrupted Tasha, who knew that tone well. "What happened this time?" Over the next few minutes, Renee recounted the incident, trying to maintain a neutral tone, but Tasha knew her too well to be fooled. "That's ridiculous," Tasha exclaimed when she finished. "You should file a formal complaint. The captain seemed reasonable. He'd probably support you." Renee played with the food on her plate. And what would be the point? You know how these things work. At most, the officer would get a slap on the wrist, and then everything would go back to normal. The point is that you shouldn't have to go through this. Nobody should. I know, Tash. Believe me, I know. There was a moment of silence before Tasha spoke again, her tone now softer. "Look, I understand if you don't want to go out today, but sometimes being with friends who understand you can help. Besides, Jordan would be devastated if you didn't show up. Renee smiled slightly. Jordan, a young gay Latino man, also understood well what it was treated as the other. He had been a great support when she faced discrimination at work the previous year. Okay, you've convinced me, he finally conceded. But I'm not staying late. Great. I'll pick you up at 9. After hanging up, Renee finished her meal and went to take a shower. The hot water helped relax her tense muscles, and she allowed herself to stay under the shower longer than usual, letting the water wash away some of the day's tension. As she dressed, choosing a simple yet elegant navy blue dress, Renee thought of her brother. Marcus had followed in his father's footsteps by enlisting, something she had initially questioned. Why serve a country that often treats us as second-class citizens? She had asked when he announced his decision. That's exactly why, Marcus replied with conviction. As Dad always says, change comes from within. The more of us occupy these spaces, the harder it will be for them to ignore us or treat us as if we don't belong. Renee admired her brother's conviction, though she didn't always share his optimism. Her own approach was different. She believed in change through education and representation in traditionally exclusionary professional spaces. That's why she worked hard in her administrative role at the hospital while simultaneously pursuing a postgraduate degree in hospital administration. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Tasha, punctual as always, was in the hallway with a wide smile and a bottle of wine. I brought reinforcements, he announced, raising the bottle. I thought we could have an aperitif before we leave. Renee smiled, genuinely happy to see her friend. You know me too well. As they poured wine and chatted animatedly about trivialities, Renee felt the weight of the day beginning to ease. Her friend's ability to make her laugh, even after a difficult day, was one of the many reasons their friendship had lasted since their college days. So, Tasha said after a while, her tone more serious, "How are you really doing?" Renee shrugged, twirling her wine glass between her fingers. "I'm fine, really. It's just that ... It's just that you shouldn't have to be okay after being treated that way," Tasha added. Exactly. Renee looked out the apartment window, observing the city lights. You know what's most frustrating? The fact that Captain Miller probably thinks he did something great today. That he's one of the good guys because he called me ma'am and made sure my documents were delivered. And you don't think he is? It's not that simple. Yes, he was polite and respectful. But what happens when he's not around? How many other people go through what I went through, or worse, and don't have a captain to intervene? The system shouldn't depend on good individuals to function correctly. It should be fair by design, not by exception. Tasha nodded thoughtfully. Have you ever considered writing about this? Your reflections are always so insightful. Renee smiled. My blog has been a bit neglected lately, with my grad school and work taking up all my time. But who knows? ... double quotes. Tasha checked her watch. Well, we'd better go. Jordan must be wondering where we are. The bar chosen for the celebration was a pleasant spot in the city center, known for its good live music and relaxed atmosphere. When Renee and Tasha arrived, the group of friends was already gathered at a table in the corner, laughing and chatting animatedly. Jordan, the birthday boy, stood up as soon as he saw them, opening his arms for a hug. I thought you had abandoned me. Never, Renee assured him, hugging him affectionately. Happy birthday, Jay. The evening progressed pleasantly with good music, drinks, and conversation. Renee found herself genuinely laughing at her friends' funny stories and, for a few hours, managed to put aside thoughts about the incident at the base. It was almost midnight when her phone vibrated with a message from Marcus. I received the documents. Thanks again. P.S. Captain Miller called me to talk today. He said you were very polite, but I noticed something happened. Are you okay? Renee felt a pang of guilt for not having told her brother the whole truth. She replied quickly, I'm fine. Just a misunderstanding at the entrance to the base. Nothing serious. I'll tell you more on Sunday. Almost immediately, her phone vibrated again. Renee, I know you. It was serious, yes. It was Peter's, wasn't it? He has a reputation around. Renee hesitated, considering what to answer. Finally, she decided on honesty. Yes, it was him. But the captain intervened. I'm fine. Really, I don't want you to get into trouble because of me. Marcus's reply came a few minutes later. I understand. But know that I'm not okay with this. and I'll try to make sure it doesn't happen again, not to you or anyone else. I love you, sis. I love you too. Take care. Renee put the phone back in her bag, feeling a mixture of concern for her brother, who was clearly outraged, pride in his integrity, and an underlying sadness that these situations continued to be a part of their lives. Are you all right? Tasha asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Yes, Renee replied, forcing a smile. Just Marcus wanting to know if I handed in the document. The band started playing an upbeat song, and Jordan pulled Renee by the hand. Let's dance. It's my birthday, you can't refuse. Laughing, Renee allowed herself to be led to the small dance floor, where her other friends were already moving to the rhythm of the music. For now, she would put her worries aside and allow herself to simply feel the joy of the present moment, dancing with friends who saw her completely, who valued her, not despite her identity, but in all her complexity. Hours later, as Tasha dropped her off at home, Renee felt significantly lighter than when she had left. The night with friends had been exactly what she needed. Thank you for convincing me to go out, Tasha said as they said goodbye. That's what friends are for, Tasha replied with a smile. And remember to think about what I said ... about writing. Your voice is important, Renee. People need to hear your stories. Renee nodded thoughtfully. I'll think about it. Inside the apartment, Nala greeted her with the same insistent meow as before. Renee picked up the cat, stroking its soft fur as she walked to the bedroom. She sat on the bed and opened her laptop. The blog she had started 3 years earlier as a personal project reflecting on her experiences as a Black woman in America was practically abandoned, with the last post dating back more than 6 months. Hesitantly, she clicked the new post button and began typing, "Today, while delivering documents to my brother at the local military base, I was reminded once again of how conditional respect can be in this country. How a simple word, man, can mean so much when it comes after its opposite ... The words flowed easily now. Her reflections on the incident at the base, on Captain Miller, on the different types of allies, and on the complexity of navigating spaces that weren't designed with people like her in mind. Or when she finished writing, it was almost 3 in the morning. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but her spirit felt lighter. There was something cathartic in transforming her experiences to word, in giving form and meaning to moments that otherwise would be just another example of everyday injustice. With the cursor blinking over the publish button, Renee hesitated momentarily. It would be the first time in months that she would share her personal reflections with the world. But Tasha's words echoed in her mind. Your voice is important. People need to hear your stories. With a determined sigh, she clicked the button. The post went live instantly, her words now available to anyone who wanted to read them, to anyone who needed to read them. Closing her laptop, Renee finally prepared for bed. As she lay down, with Nala curled up beside her, she thought about the next day, and the next, and all the days to come. Days in which she would likely face similar situations, in which her presence would be questioned, in which her humanity would be conditionally acknowledged. But she also thought about the allies she would find along the way, like Captain Miller, who, despite his limitations, had chosen to intervene, like Tasha, who encouraged her to use her voice, like her brother Marcus, determined to change the system from the inside out, like her parents, who gave her the tools to navigate a world that wouldn't always welcome her. And most importantly, she thought of herself, of her own capacity to transform painful experiences into reflection and growth, to find strength where others might see only victim, to continue walking with dignity and purpose on a path that others had paved before her, and that she was now helping to expand for those who would come after. With that comforting thought, Renee finally fell asleep, knowing that although the world didn't always change at the speed she wished, every small action, every word written, every moment of dignified resistance contributed to a future where ma'am wouldn't be a surprising concession, but an automatic recognition of the shared humanity of all. On Sunday, as arranged, Renee met Marcus for lunch. Her brother seemed more serious than usual, and she knew that the incident at the base still bothered him. I spoke with some colleagues about what happened, he said after they placed the orders. Apparently, it wasn't the first time Peters has acted this way. There's a pattern, Renee sighed. It doesn't surprise me. Captain Miller is aware of this. In fact, He was the one who came to talk to me after you left. He wanted to know exactly what happened from your point of view. And what did you say, considering I didn't tell you all the details? Renee asked, raising an eyebrow. Marcus smiled slightly. I said that knowing you, if you mentioned it was just a misunderstanding, it was probably something much worse. The captain seemed to understand. And now, Peters is being temporarily reassigned to administrative duties while he undergoes additional training. Marcus made air quotes with his fingers. It's not much, but it's something. Renee nodded thoughtfully. Measures like this were small steps toward broader change, even if they sometimes seemed insufficient given the magnitude of the problem. Oh, and there's one more thing, Marcus continued, his tone more animated now. Captain, Miller mentioned that he read your blog. Renee nearly choked on the water she was drinking. What? Yes. Apparently, after the incident, he searched for her name online and found her blog. He read her most recent post, and Renee leaned forward, anxious and apprehensive at the same time. And he said it was ... Marcus paused, searching for the exact words. Enlightening. He said it made him think about things he'd never considered before, that he'd never really understood how a single word could carry so much weight. Renee felt a wave of conflicting emotions, surprise, pride, but also a certain vulnerability at knowing that her personal reflections had been read by someone directly involved in the incident. He also mentioned that he will use his post anonymous. Of course, as discussion material in the next diversity training for base officers, Marcus added, I don't know if I feel flattered or exploited, Renee commented with a half smile. Knowing the captain, I think. The intention is genuine, Marcus replied. He seems to really want to do better. Renee nodded slowly. I suppose it's a start. Imperfect allies are still allies in a way. They continued talking during lunch. Moving on to lighter topics, Marcus's plans for his next period of leave, Renee's studies, the latest news from her parents in Florida, but the conversation about the incident at the base and its repercussions had planted a seed in Renee's mind. The following week, she received an unexpected email through the contact form on her blog. It was from Captain Miller, Miss Johnson, the message began. First, I would like to apologize for accessing your blog without your permission. It was an intrusion, albeit well-intentioned. Your post about the incident at the base deeply affected me and made me question many of my own assumptions and practices. I am implementing changes to security and training procedures that I hope will help prevent similar situations in the future. If you are open to it, I would like to invite you to speak at one of our diversity training sessions. Your perspective would be invaluable. I will fully respect your decision, whatever it may be. Sincerely, Captain Robert Miller. Renee read and reread the email several times, carefully considering her reply. Finally, she began to type. Captain Miller, thank you for your email and your honesty. My blog is public precisely because I believe in the power of shared stories to foster understanding and change. Regarding the invitation, I need some time to consider it. While I value the opportunity to contribute to positive change, I also have reservations about the potential emotional impact of reliving and discussing these experiences repeatedly. I suggest that, in the meantime, you consider broadening your sources to include diverse perspectives. There are many educators, writers, and activists whose work could enrich your training program. I can suggest some names if you wish. I will continue to reflect on your invitation and will get back to you when I have made a decision. Sincerely, Renee Johnson. Before sending the email, Renee reread it one more time. It was a balanced response. Neither a complete refusal nor an immediate acceptance. It was a reminder that while she valued dialogue and education as tools for change, she also needed to establish healthy boundaries and protect her own emotional well-being. After sending the reply, Renee opened a new document on her laptop. Inspired by recent events, she began drafting a series of blog posts, broader reflections on what it meant to navigate institutional spaces as a Black woman, on the concept of effective versus performative alliance, on the tension between the need for systemic change and the value of individual interventions like Captain Miller. As the words flowed, Renee felt a renewed sense of purpose. Perhaps Tasha was right, her voice mattered, and by sharing her experiences and reflections, she could contribute, even modestly, to a broader conversation about building a society where respect is not conditional, where ma'am is not ... This was not a surprising concession, but simply a basic recognition of the inherent dignity of every person.